Good morning. How are you doing? Well, very well. Good morning. Good morning. How are you doing? So there are three really important things you need to do if you're kicking off a safety event. So the first thing is to make sure you thank the people who've organised it, because it's a massive commitment to pull all this together. So thank you very much to the IET and, of course, to Scanware and Angus and the whole team for pulling this together. Massive amount of work. There's a fantastic agenda over the next couple of days. So I'm really looking forward to it. So very keen to support it. The next thing you need to make sure that you do is when you're talking about safety, you need to make sure you don't give the impression accidentally that you've got all the answers and you've got everything solved. Because if you start thinking like that, you simply don't. And that's something we all need to remember. And then the third thing, you need to think about the audience that you're talking to. So wide range of people in the room, but there's an awful lot of engineers in the room. And as we're standing here in this sort of fine institution, they'll have a formal definition of engineering and you'll have your own. But if you think about engineering, it's kind of like juggling. Right? You've got to get things done. Of course, you've got to make money, otherwise you don't get to do the next project. And the other thing is you need to get people home safe. So if you don't make money and get things done, well, I guess that makes you a scientist. But if you don't actually get people home safe, well, that's worse, very much worse. That makes you a psychopath, because there's something absolutely fundamental about getting people home safe. And Angus mentioned just the wide range of people in the audience, wide range of countries that we all come from. There's something fundamental about getting home safe. And I'll talk to you in a minute about SSE, what we're approaching, how we're approaching that. But for now, I'll just show you a wee video here just to explore that a wee bit more about what it means to get home safe. So if we could run the video, please.
Take one. I stay safe for my wife, Ashley.
For my 8-year-old daughter, Evelyn, and my 5-year-old son, Milo.
I stay safe for my family, my wife.
I stay safe for my family and my friend.
I stay safe for my wife, Charlotte. This is her.
I stay safe for my grandson, AJ. He puts a smile on my face all the time.
I stay safe for my partner. It's got pride of place on the mantelpiece.
I stay safe for my wife and my wee dog Max, my best friend.
I stay safe for my mum. I'm her only daughter and she's also my only mum.
Honestly, I think that's unimaginable if one day I didn't return from work.
The impact on my wife, who, as I'm a carer to her, it would destroy her world.
I feel like it would actually turn my mum's life upside down.
Sheer devastation, I think, because we've been joined at the hip since school.
To not get home to them would just be horrendous.
I wouldn't want to lose all the possibilities that we have for the future, any of the adventures that we've kind of got planned, or, possible kids in the future.
So, honestly, I don't want to imagine it at all.
We all come to work and never expect that we're not going to be able to go back. It's our families back at home that expect us to come back home.
You've got your parents, friends, people that rely on you.
It's important to stay safe because it's not just you that can get affected by something bad happening.
I've got so much more to see. I love to travel, me and my wife. There's a bright future there. I want to live as long as I possibly can.
Somebody said to me at the start of my career, you can't unbreak an egg. Once it's broken, you can't put it back together.
You might think you're invincible.
It's about never forgetting it can happen to you.
Everyone's story's important. Everyone has their own person or their own family that they need to get back to and they'll be missed by.
So that's a really interesting question, and about why do people want to get home safe? And you can get a whole range of answers when you ask everybody that question. Obviously, if somebody's got a dog, they'll show you a picture of their dog and then talk about their dog for ages. But that's a really important aspect of considering the brutal reality when something goes wrong. Because when you think about design and the specifics of things, how we commission things, how we operate things, that's all very well, but if we can't get people home safe, it's a little bit worthless. And if you think about what we do as organizations, we do some amazing things, and your companies will be the same. You'll do some amazing things, you'll do things that you're really super proud of, you'll leave a bit of a legacy. But a legacy isn't just what you do, it's how you do it. And actually, making sure that we get home safe is the single most important thing. So to set a wee bit of context for SSE, we do a whole load of stuff, and you'll hear about some of my colleagues talking a bit more about the detail. But we're going through a whole series of expansions related to our net zero acceleration plan, so a massive amount of growth as an organization. We're investing 20.5 billion over the next number of years in order to deliver net zero and support that. And we've got brilliant projects like the biggest offshore wind farm. We've got massive pipelines connecting the Shetland Islands back to mainland UK. We're working with all kinds of different partners. So we're in this period of growth, and a lot of people in the audience will be in a similar sort of position where there's a lot going on. And it can be a real challenge. And as we're going through that challenge, we really start to think about what are the big things that we need to do as an organization to make sure that we get everybody home safe. And in that context, we thought about three big things. You can actually make absolutely anything safe working with absolutely anybody. But it's a hell of a lot easier to do that if you partner with the right people and you work with them, that sort of joint industry to get something done, but to get everybody home safe. So that's one of our big things, partnering with the right people. The other thing that we're thinking about is making it easy for people to do the right thing. And that concept is so important. If you make it easy for people to do the right thing, they're going to do the right thing. But then there's something else about understanding the risks, understanding the rigor and approach. How do you make sure you're as good as you think you are? And also, if you're in a period of growth, how do you make sure that as you grow, the chinks in your armor don't grow too? So going back to that middle one there about thinking about the rigor in our systems and how we approach things. Well, actually, there's an interesting point. We tried to take a step back a good number of years ago and recognize that safety wasn't something separate to what you do. Safety is what we all do. It's core to everything. And we built our management system around plant, process, people, and performance. Some quite basic things. Because safety isn't just about holding the handrail or occupational health or well-being. It's about engineering. It's about getting things done. It's the practicalities of everything. And behind that, of course, there's more detail and more detail and more detail. But it's worth us exploring that just a little bit more. So in plant, the fundamental integrity of the design of an asset and how we maintain it is critically important. There's also something about how you manage change, because who's ever designed something and commissioned it all the way through if it's a big enough project without there being change? And during that operation change, there's a lot of change as well. So how do you manage that? Operations and maintenance, how you actually operate the kit and maintain it's critically important. You've got processes around safe system of work, obviously, how you manage plant and process information, how you think about risk, how you deal with things when things go wrong. And then in terms of people, human factors in design is critically important. You've got personnel training and performance to make sure people are actually competent to do what you're asking them to do. How do you manage changes to organizations so you're absolutely supporting your assets? And then contractor safety and performance. No one company ever does these things on their own, particularly SSE. We're heavily reliant on some brilliant contract partners that we operate with. So how do we work with them to make sure we set them up for success? And then performance, well, audit and check you're as good as you think you are. Have that sort of formal management review. And when things do go wrong, make sure you've investigated things properly. So that gives a little bit of a sense of the framework that we have in SSE. And that's really important. That rigor is important. But it needs to have the other side of it. If you think about safety being like rigor and passion, you need to get that balance between those two things. So it's worth us going back and exploring, well, why do people make mistakes? And how do we make sure that they don't? So hands up if you ever locked yourself out of your house. Hands up. Keep your hands up, keep your hands up. That is more than I thought, actually. What are you guys like? So that's about 50% of the audience, actually, weirdly, has locked themselves out of their house. And what did you do? So you put your hand up? I'll pick on you. So what happened? How did it happen? If you just shout out. Right. The wind did it excuse. Okay, that's good, that's good. Okay, fully clothed? Yeah, fully clothed, that's good. It's amazing when you ask people what they're up to. So that's a great example of actually not pausing for breath before you do something. And actually, it's really easy for people to make mistakes like that. That's kind of common. So for the next session, we're going to have a little bit of a game show, a little bit of game. So you have volunteered yourself, as have you, Jasmine? So one of you needs to keep score. So if you could keep score, and I'm going to show you a number of objects on the screen just to illustrate this point of we all have limits. So you up for that? Sure. Thanks for being game for that. So we just step through those. All you need to do is just remember as many of the objects as you can. It's like a generation game. Okay, so everybody else stay quiet, if you would. And if we just shout out the objects and you're keeping score counting the objects. Let's go.
Washing machine, Teddy, Tesla, wind turbines, umbrellas.
So that was it. We got that. It's amazing. People always go off to a really quick start. So how many was that? 5. Okay. So there's a concept called 7 plus or minus 2. Ever heard? Hands up if you heard of that? Yeah. So a load of you have heard of it. Probably 10% of you have heard of it. So it's the idea that in your short-term memory, you can only remember 7 plus or minus 2 things. If you're Stephen Fry, obviously you can remember 15, but most people 7 plus or minus 2. So that would be 5 and 9. So you've proved the point. It's a Monday morning, off to a slow start, but 5 things. And that's kind of an interesting concept because people often forget things. So what did you forget? What did you miss? Shout out everybody else. Yep. Okay. So there's another interesting phenomenon there as well, which is everybody else in the room can see everything else. So collectively, we can see it all, but any one person can't remember everything and can't see everything. And that's an interesting point to explore when you think about how do you set people up for success and make it easy for people to do the right thing. So if you indulge me a little bit more, if you think about getting people home safe, there are positive impacts and negative impacts. There's a balance here, right? And there's 7 plus or minus 2. And we've probably all had this thing in our heads about 7 plus or minus 2. Ever done the, hands up if you've done the thing where you're going to bed and you think, oh, I must remember to do that for the kids. I must remember to bring that book to work. I must do it. Hands up. You've gone to bed? Yeah. People just don't remember stuff. And if you and I are going to do an activity like fix those lights, and we move all the chairs and we put a ladder up, and I'm going up the ladder, but you've got your work bag there right at the bottom of the steps. There's no point in me thinking as I'm going up the steps there to try and work on that to remember not to trip over your bag, because I just won't. So there's something there about, well, what do you do about that? There's like an immediate corrective action. If you see something is out of place, put it to the side, because people will not remember everything. There's 7 plus or minus 2, and if you're like me, 2 of those things are related to food, and one of them is to do with collecting the kids. So there's limits on what we can all remember. So that's a really important aspect. There's something else about alpha sleep. It's this concept of people just going into a little bit of a dream world. And it's perfectly fine. You can function perfectly well, and it happens when you're driving. So you ever been in that situation where you've been driving home, and you've maybe passed your normal route, and you've maybe gone through 2 roundabouts, but you just can't remember the roundabouts. It's that idea of alpha sleep. And if somebody pulls out in front of you, well, that shocks you into doing something else. But where it can really cause problems is if you're continuing on from one phase of a job to the next, you just carry on through and you don't actually think about it. There's something else about loss of focus. So in any 2-hour period, 20 minutes of your head will be outside the room thinking about something else, thinking about holidays, thinking about what you're going to do next. It's a perfectly normal thing. In any 1 hour, on average, it's about 10 minutes. And that's normal. And there's something else about this as well. If you think about what someone does in their normal day-to-day habits in work, if you're a bricklayer, you don't spend all your time thinking about how you're going to make that next brick stick to that next brick. You don't think about that at all. You're thinking about your holidays, you're thinking about what else you're going to do. So actually, the antidote for some of those things and loss of focus is actually to go with it and think about having really, really good habits about what you do. So if your habit happens to be always picking your key up from the same place in your house, kind of that's the way you do it. And you can bring that into the world of work in terms of how we set people up for success. The antidote to all of that is having those really good habits, really good communications in the team, and having really good plans. So separating out the thinking of an activity from the doing of the activity to make sure we set people up for success. Something else about risk perception. Sometimes people think something's so incredibly important that it has to be done at that time in that way. But they can't get to the end of the sentence when they're describing that to you if somebody's actually lying hurt in the ground. They just can't. So there's something about risk perception, people having that raised awareness of risk. What helps with that is that idea of the onlooker sees more. So if you're working on a task, you need to set people up such that people are prepared to coach them and challenge them and nudge them so that they do things safely. But it's all a balance. Something else about that wrong priority. We all get wrapped up in our world of getting something done, but of course what we mean is we get it done and everybody gets home safe and we make a bit of money and we get to do the next job. So all of these things balance off about from one side to the other in terms of having the right mindset. The other big bit in the middle is thinking about mental health and physical health. And what we see is that on the most severe incidents that we encounter in SSE and with our contract partners, oftentimes people have had other things going on. Some of those 7 plus or minus 2 are used up through things that are happening outside work, issues with their partner, issues with their kids, elderly parents. We have all stuff going on outside work. And that's not an excuse, but it helps us understand sometimes issues around mental health, physical health can make a massive difference. And then there's issues about stress and fatigue. And you ever been in a situation where you're trying to get somebody to do something and they're sitting typing away and you start standing over their shoulder to get them to do it? Well, that's when people start making mistakes. So when we look at all of those things about that bit in the middle, good news is you can turn it into a positive. You can set people up for success in terms of what they do. You can really try and nudge people along to do the right thing. So for us, language is really important in SSE. We keep reiterating the same things. These things in the bottom are like the basics of why people make mistakes. What we try to do is introduce into our language words around if it's not safe, we don't do it. We take pride in our work and our environment. We plan, scan, and adapt. So that idea of planning your work properly, setting people up for success, and making sure you scan the horizon to make sure you understand what's going on. And then see it, sort it, report it. That immediate corrective action, get things done, get things moved, because we forget about things otherwise. And then finally, take care of ourselves, each other, and the environment. Nobody does safety well just because someone like me says they should. They do it because they like the people they work with, and they recognize that concept of getting home safe. So these are just some of the ideas that we play with in SSE, and we've been thinking over the last while about how do we expand that even further, try to give people a real sense of what happens when something goes wrong. So we've been pushing our boundaries a little bit and thinking about how do we give people the experience of a really serious incident without having to go through the pain of that incident, and how do we then give them tools to explore that a bit further. So we've put some immersive training in place. I'll show you another wee video here just to give you a sense of that. This centre is about giving people a real experience of what it's like when there's a really severe incident, and for people to be immersed in that experience and to really understand what it feels like.
Tomorrow morning, I want those superheaters coming off it straight away!
And then giving them tools to understand what happened and what they can do differently to make sure that, well, we get everybody home safe.
God almighty, yes! Once I've located more strops, grease guns, beddings, food, you name it. This is a priority! What? Don't do anything without the right lifting kit and wait for your lifting supervisor. Stay alert, fellas! They did what they did off their own backs.
Our challenge is to make it safe for everybody, for every single task, every single day. And if you think about the really difficult conditions, the really challenging things that we need to do, we need to make sure we equip people as best they can so they can look after themselves, the contract partners can look after themselves, and we can make sure that everybody, including our communities, are safe. Already with our immersive training, we've got 1,700 colleagues through that training with SSE and contract partners. And the Fascally Centre in Perth, we can get about 7,000 people through a year. So our intention is over the next number of years is absolutely to maximise the number of people that we can get through. Every additional person that we can get through that training is another person that can make sure they can get people home safe.
Showing is pressure.
SSE are unusual as an organisation in the degree of commitment that they've shown. I mean, not only are they sending their people through 2 existing centres, but they've decided to build their own. And that kind of tells you enough about that organisation and the kind of culture that is already there and which they want to, embed and cement.
Seeing the incident itself was incredibly impactful. It really does resonate when you see things like this happen. You see the event itself, you see the events leading up to it, and then you actually see the fallout of the event as well. You know, what doing safety wrong, what the impact of that can be.
The legacy that we're creating here in Perth will go on for many years, and our ambition obviously is to get our own people through and our contract partners, and we expect to take 3 years to do that. But once that's complete, there is an opportunity for other industries and organisations to use our centre, and that will create new ways of learning for safety, health and environment across all industries, and that's a real legacy for us at SSE.
So that's a wee bit of a sense of some of the things that are on our minds as SSE. So partnering with the right people, making sure that as we grow, the chinks in our armour don't grow too, but that fundamental thing of making it easy for people to do the right thing. Should have said earlier, for the wee game, there are no prizes. You don't win the car, but there are some bananas outside, so you can help yourself. I'll just leave you with one thought. As we're juggling all the things that we need to juggle, so getting things done, making money and safety, people really need to see that safety is the ball that we don't drop. I'll leave you with that. Thank you. Thanks, guys.